Night everything changed. Rain hammered against Elena Martinez's windshield as she drove through downtown Seattle. The old camera equipment in her passenger seat rattled with every bump. At 26 years old, Elena had learned to accept her struggling photography business and tiny apartment. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like something was about to break. The traffic light turned yellow. Elena pressed the brake pedal. Nothing happened. Her heart jumped into her throat as she pumped the brakes again. Still nothing. The intersection loomed ahead, and a sleek black Mercedes was crossing through the green light. Time seemed to slow down. Elena yanked the steering wheel hard to the right, but it was too late. The sickening crunch of metal against metal filled the air. Her airbag exploded in her face. Everything went dark for a moment. When Elena opened her eyes, rain was pouring through her broken window. Her head throbbed. Her hands shook as she unbuckled her seatbelt. Through the rain and broken glass, she saw a tall figure approaching her car. The man moved with confidence despite the storm, his expensive suit getting soaked. "Are you injured?" The voice was deep and commanding. Strong hands pulled her car door open. Elena found herself staring up at the most striking man she had ever seen. Dark hair, sharp jawline, and eyes that seemed to see straight through her. He looked like he stepped out of a magazine about billionaires and power. I don't know," Elena stammered. Her photography camera bag had spilled everywhere. "My brakes failed. I couldn't stop." The man's eyes narrowed as he looked at her old car. "We need to get you checked by a doctor." Before Elena could protest, he had his phone out. "Send an ambulance to 5th and Madison. Also, have someone tow both vehicles." "I can't afford an ambulance," Elena blurted out. Reality was crashing down on her. She didn't have insurance that covered this kind of accident. And this man's Mercedes probably cost more than she would earn in 5 years. The stranger studied her face. "I'm Marcus Castellano. And you just crashed into a car worth $200,000. Elena's stomach dropped. She recognized that name. Marcus Castellano owned half the buildings in Seattle. His family company, Castellano Enterprises, was legendary. And she had just destroyed his car. ## the impossible deal. 3 days later, Elena sat in the most intimidating office she had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire Seattle skyline. Everything in Marcus Castellano's office screamed wealth and power. She felt small in the leather chair across from his massive desk. Marcus entered without knocking on his own door. He wore another perfectly tailored suit, this time in charcoal gray. His presence filled the room immediately. Elena clutched her old purse tighter, wishing she had worn something better than her thrift store dress. "Miss Martinez." Marcus sat down and opened a folder. "Your car had no insurance. You have $1,700 in your bank account. You rent a studio apartment for $800 a month. Your photography business made $9,000 last year." He looked up at her with those intense eyes. "How exactly do you plan to pay for the damages to my vehicle?" Elena felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. I'll set up a payment plan. I can work extra jobs. The repairs will cost $43,000, Marcus said calmly. At your current income, that would take you approximately 12 years to pay off. Tears threatened to spill from Elena's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. She wouldn't cry in front of this cold billionaire. "Then I guess I'll be paying you for 12 years. Something flickered in Marcus's expression. "Respect maybe. Or amusement. I have a different proposal." Elena waited, her heart pounding. Nothing good ever came from deals with men like him. "I need someone to pretend to be my fiancé for 6 months, Marcus continued. He stood up and walked to the window, his back to her. "There's a business merger that requires certain appearances. My board of directors believes a settled family man makes better decisions. They're threatening to vote me out as CEO, unless I prove I'm ready to commit to something besides work." "You want me to lie to your entire company?" Elena couldn't believe what she was hearing. Marcus turned around. "I want you to attend events with me, smile for photographs, play the role of a woman in love. In return, I'll forgive your debt and pay you $10,000 per month." Elena did the math in her head. $60,000 for 6 months of pretending. That was more money than she had ever imagined having. She could save it, start her photography business properly, maybe even find out what really happened to her father. That thought made her pause. Her father, Ricardo Martinez, had owned a successful restaurant chain 5 years ago. Then suddenly everything collapsed. He lost all his money, all his restaurants. 6 months later he disappeared. The police said he probably ran away from his debts. But Elena never believed that. Her father wouldn't abandon her. She had spent 5 years trying to find answers. And now she was sitting in the office of one of Seattle's most powerful men. A man whose company had bought her father's restaurant buildings after the bankruptcy. Why me? Elena asked carefully. You could hire a professional actress. Someone who knows your world. Marcus sat on the edge of his desk, closer to her now. Because you're real. My family and business partners can smell a fake from miles away. You crashed into my car by accident. You're a struggling photographer with nothing to hide. That authenticity is exactly what I need. But Elena did have something to hide. She had suspicions about what happened to her father. And Marcus Castellano's name kept appearing in her research. This could be her chance to get close to the truth. I'll do it, Elena said, meeting his gaze. But I have one condition. I want access to photograph any event we attend. I need to build my portfolio. Marcus smiled for the first time. It transformed his face from intimidating to almost handsome. Almost. Deal. We start tomorrow night. There's a charity gala at the Grand Pacific Hotel. I'll send a stylist to your apartment at 4 o'clock. As Elena left his office, her mind raced. She was playing a dangerous game. Getting close to Marcus meant getting closer to discovering what happened to her father. But it also meant lying every day. Could she pretend to love a man she was investigating? ## entering the world of wealth. The next evening, Elena barely recognized herself in the mirror. The stylist had transformed her from a struggling artist into someone who could belong at a billionaire's arm. The emerald dress hugged her curves perfectly. Her dark hair fell in glossy waves. Diamond earrings sparkled at her ears. They're not real, the stylist assured her, catching Elena's worried look. Mr. Castellano said you'd panic if they were. A knock at her apartment door made her jump. Elena opened it to find Marcus in a tuxedo that probably cost more than her yearly rent. He looked her up and down slowly, and something warm flickered in his cold eyes. You clean up well, Miss Martinez. Elena, she corrected him. If I'm going to be your fake fiancé, you should use my first name. Elena, he repeated, and the way he said it made her shiver. Shall we? The Grand Pacific Hotel ballroom was filled with Seattle's elite. Elena recognized politicians, tech CEOs, and old money families from the society pages. Everyone turned to stare as Marcus entered with her on his arm. Whispers followed them across the room. Who is she? Marcus Castellano has never brought a date to these events. Where did he find her? Marcus's hand settled on the small of Elena's back, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. Ignore them. They're just surprised I'm actually capable of human connection. Are you? Elena found herself asking. He looked down at her with an unreadable expression. That's what you're here to help me figure out. The evening passed in a blur of introductions and champagne. Elena smiled until her face hurt. She laughed at jokes she didn't understand. She let Marcus pull her close for photographs. And through it all she watched him. The way he commanded every room he entered. The way people practically bowed when he spoke. The way his hand never left her back, as if claiming her. Then Elena saw her. A stunning blonde woman in a red dress, staring at them with pure hatred in her eyes. The woman approached with the grace of a predator. Marcus, darling. Her voice dripped with false sweetness. You didn't tell me you'd moved on so quickly. Marcus's entire body tensed. Victoria. I didn't expect to see you here. Victoria's cold gaze swept over Elena. Is this your new flavor of the month? How quaint. She looks nothing like your usual type. Elena is my fiancée, Marcus said firmly. His arm tightened around Elena's waist. And I'd appreciate it if you showed her respect. The word fiancé hung in the air. This wasn't part of the plan. They were supposed to be dating, not engaged. But Elena understood immediately. This Victoria was testing them. and Marcus was establishing boundaries. Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. Fiancé? How fascinating. You were single 3 weeks ago when you came to my apartment. Elena felt like she'd been slapped, but she forced herself to smile sweetly. Sometimes the right person changes everything in an instant. Marcus and I met during the storm last week. It was like lightning struck us both. It wasn't entirely a lie. Their meeting had certainly been shocking. Victoria laughed, but it held no warmth. How romantic. Well, congratulations. I'm sure it will last as long as all of Marcus's other commitments. She walked away, her red dress swishing dramatically. Marcus exhaled slowly. I apologize for that. Victoria is my former business partner's daughter. We had a brief relationship 2 years ago. She didn't take the breakup well. She came to your apartment 3 weeks ago? Elena asked. She showed up uninvited with a contract proposal. I sent her away. Marcus looked uncomfortable for the first time all evening. Victoria is persistent and dangerous when she doesn't get what she wants. Before Elena could respond, an older man with silver hair approached them. He looked at Elena with sharp, calculating eyes. Marcus, introduce me to your surprise guest. Elena Martinez, this is Richard Castellano. My father. Elena's heart stopped. Richard Castellano, the CEO who had taken over her father's restaurant locations. The man who might hold all the answers she needed. Richard took her hand and kissed it in an old-fashioned gesture. Martinez. That name sounds familiar. It's a common surname, Elena said quickly, pulling her hand away. But Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. Yes, of course. Tell me, Elena, what do you do? I'm a photographer. How interesting. And how did you meet my son? Elena felt Marcus tense beside her. They hadn't prepared a story. I crashed into his car during the storm last week. To her surprise, Richard laughed. How perfectly mundane. I like that. Too many women chase Marcus for his money. You seem refreshingly honest. He turned to his son. Don't let this one get away. She might actually be good for you. As Richard walked away, Elena realized she was shaking. Being close to answers about her father was one thing. Being inside the family that destroyed him was another. ## dangerous discoveries. Later that night, Marcus drove Elena home in silence. The rain had returned, drumming against the car roof. Elena stared out the window, her mind spinning with everything she'd learned. You handled that well, Marcus finally said. My father doesn't like many people, but he seemed impressed by you. Your ex-girlfriend hates me. Victoria hates everyone. Marcus pulled up to Elena's apartment building. But yes, you should be careful around her. She has a vindictive streak. Elena unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't get out. Can I ask you something? That depends on the question. 5 years ago, your company bought several restaurant properties from a bankruptcy sale. Do you remember that deal? Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I handle hundreds of property deals. Why? Just curious. I saw it in some old news articles. Elena watched his face carefully. The original owner disappeared after losing everything. Something dark flashed across Marcus's expression. Business failures happen. People make bad investments. That's not my responsibility. Even if your company benefited from their loss? Marcus turned to face her fully. Are you accusing me of something, Elena? She met his gaze steadily. I'm just trying to understand the man I'm supposed to pretend to love. They stared at each other in the dim light of the car. Rain blurred the world outside. For a moment, Elena thought Marcus would throw her out and end their deal. Instead, he reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Everyone has secrets, Elena. Including you, I suspect. His voice was soft but held a warning. Be careful how deep you dig. Sometimes the truth destroys everything it touches. Elena climbed out of the car, her heart pounding. She watched Marcus drive away into the rainy night. She was playing a dangerous game, pretending to love a man she suspected of destroying her father, getting close to the family that held all the answers. But as she walked up to her apartment, Elena touched her ear where Marcus's fingers had brushed her skin. The gesture had felt genuine, almost tender. What if she was wrong about him? What if the truth was more complicated than she thought? Inside her apartment, Elena pulled out the box she kept hidden in her closet. Old photographs of her father, news clippings about the restaurant bankruptcy, and one photograph that made her blood run cold every time she looked at it. The photo showed her father at a business dinner, 15 years ago. He was smiling, young and successful. And sitting across from him, also smiling, was Richard Castellano. They had known each other, been business associates, maybe even friends, which meant Marcus had lied to her tonight. His family knew exactly who her father was. The question was why they were pretending otherwise. Elena put the photograph away carefully. She had 6 months as Marcus's fake fiancé. 6 months to uncover the truth about what happened to her father. 6 months to decide if Marcus was an enemy to destroy or something more complicated. As she got ready for bed, Elena's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You looked beautiful tonight. But you're asking the wrong questions. If you want to know what really happened to Ricardo Martinez, meet me tomorrow at Pike Place Market. 2 p.m. Come alone. Don't tell Marcus. Elena stared at the message, her hands shaking. Someone had been watching her. Someone knew who she really was. And someone wanted to tell her secrets that Marcus's family had hidden for 5 years. Tomorrow would reveal if she was brave enough to face the truth. Even if that truth destroyed the strange connection growing between her and the man she was supposed to be investigating. The rain continued to fall outside her window. And Elena knew that everything was about to change. End of part 1. Part 2. The Burning Truth, 2,000 words. The Secret Meeting. Elena arrived at Pike Place Market 15 minutes early. The famous Seattle landmark buzzed with tourists and locals browsing fish stalls and flower stands. She bought a coffee from a small cafe and pretended to watch street performers while scanning the crowd for whoever had sent that mysterious text. Her phone buzzed at exactly 2 o'clock. Turn around. Blue jacket. Gray beanie. Elena spun slowly and spotted him. A man in his 50s, thin and nervous-looking, standing by a flower vendor. He gestured for her to follow him to a quieter corner near the water. Who are you? Elena demanded when they were alone. The Puget Sound stretched out behind them, gray and cold under cloudy skies. My name is Thomas Chun. I worked for your father. The man's eyes were haunted. I was the accountant for Martinez Restaurant Group. I know what really happened 5 years ago. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. Then tell me. Please. Thomas looked around nervously. Your father didn't make bad business decisions. He was sabotaged. Someone systematically destroyed his company from the inside. Fake invoices, stolen funds, contracts that were secretly altered. By the time Ricardo discovered what was happening, it was too late. Who did it? Elena grabbed his arm. Who destroyed my father? Richard Castellano orchestrated everything. But he had help from someone inside your father's company. Someone Ricardo trusted completely. Thomas pulled out a worn envelope from his jacket. These are copies of documents I saved. Bank transfers, emails, meeting notes. Proof that the Castellanos deliberately bankrupted your father to steal his prime restaurant locations. Elena's hands shook as she took the envelope. 5 years of questions finally had answers. Why are you telling me this now? Because I've lived with this guilt for too long. I should have spoken up back then, but Richard threatened my family. He said if I revealed anything, my daughter would have an accident. Thomas's voice cracked. I was a coward. But when I saw you with Marcus Castellano last night at the gala, I knew you were planning something. You deserve to know the truth about what they did. What happened to my father after the bankruptcy? Elena's voice was barely a whisper. Did Richard Castellano? Your father discovered evidence that could have sent Richard to prison. Corporate fraud, bribery, racketeering. He planned to go to the FBI. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. He called me the night before he disappeared. Said he was meeting someone who could help him. I never heard from him again. Elena felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Her father hadn't run away. He'd been silenced. Do you think Marcus knows? About what his father did? Thomas hesitated. I don't know. Marcus was young back then, just starting in the business. But the Castellano family protects its own. If Marcus discovered the truth, would he turn on his father? Or would he protect the family empire? After Thomas left, Elena sat on a bench staring at the envelope. Inside were answers she'd searched for years to find. Proof that could destroy the Castellano family. Proof that could send Richard to prison for the rest of his life. But using this evidence meant exposing Marcus. Destroying any chance of the connection she felt growing between them. Even if that connection was built on lies. Her phone rang. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. "Where are you?" His voice sounded concerned. "My driver was supposed to pick you up an hour ago. We have the museum fundraiser tonight. I'm at Pike Place Market. Just needed some air." Elena stood up, clutching the envelope tighter. "I'll be ready when your driver arrives." "Elena." Marcus paused. "Are you all right? You sound different." "I'm fine." The lie tasted bitter. "Just a headache. I'll see you tonight." ## playing both sides. The museum fundraiser was held at the Seattle Art Museum. Elena wore a sapphire blue gown that Marcus had sent to her apartment. She looked the part of a billionaire's fiancée perfectly. But inside she was falling apart. Marcus took her hand as they entered the museum. His touch felt warm and solid. "Real. You look beautiful tonight." "Thank you." Elena forced a smile. Every kind word from him now felt like a knife twisting in her heart. His father had destroyed hers. How could she stand here pretending everything was fine? Richard Castellano approached them with a distinguished older woman on his arm. "Marcus, Elena. I'd like you to meet Senator Patricia Morrison. She's very interested in your photography work, Elena." Elena shook the senator's hand, automatically shifting into the role she'd been playing. "Smile. Be charming. Don't let them see the rage burning beneath the surface." "Your son tells me you have quite an eye for capturing urban landscapes," Senator Morrison said warmly. "I'm actually looking for an artist to photograph Seattle's historic buildings for a preservation campaign." "That sounds wonderful," Elena replied, even as her mind raced. This was Richard's doing. He was helping her career. Why would he do that if he knew who she really was? Unless he didn't know. Unless Marcus had never told his father about investigating her background. "Elena, darling, you seem distracted." Richard's voice held a note of concern that sounded almost genuine. "Is everything all right?" "Just overwhelmed by all of this," Elena said, gesturing to the elegant crowd. "This world is very different from what I'm used to." Richard smiled. "You'll adjust." Marcus chose well. "You have integrity. That's rare in our circles." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Between you and me, I'm glad he found someone real. Someone who didn't grow up in this world of money and manipulation." The irony burned. Richard Castellano lecturing her about manipulation, while he'd orchestrated her father's destruction. Across the room, Victoria appeared in another stunning dress, this time in silver. She watched Elena with calculating eyes, like a cat studying a mouse. "Excuse me," Elena said. "I need to use the restroom." She escaped into the quiet hallway, her breathing ragged. In the bathroom, she splashed cold water on her face, careful not to ruin her makeup. The envelope from Thomas Chan was hidden in her apartment. Evidence that could destroy everything. The bathroom door opened. Victoria entered, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Well. The little photographer, all alone. Victoria pulled out lipstick and applied it slowly, watching Elena in the mirror. "You're not really in love with Marcus, are you?" Elena's heart skipped. "I don't know what you mean. Please. I've known Marcus for years. I can read him better than anyone. And the way he looks at you." Victoria smiled coldly. "He's actually falling for you. How tragic." "What do you want, Victoria?" "I want to know who you really are." Victoria turned to face Elena directly. "I have investigators, you know. Very thorough ones. And they found something interesting about you. Your real last name. Your father's business." Elena's blood turned to ice. "I don't know what you're talking about." Ricardo Martinez, owner of Martinez Restaurant Group, bankrupted 5 years ago after Richard Castellano's company systematically destroyed him. Victoria's eyes gleamed with malicious pleasure. "You're using Marcus to get revenge on his family." How deliciously twisted. You can't prove any of that. I don't need to prove it. I just need to tell Richard. Victoria examined her nails casually. Imagine his reaction when he discovers his son's fiancée is the daughter of the man whose business he destroyed. Marcus will be humiliated. Richard will make sure you disappear just like your father did. Elena's fists clenched. Don't you dare threaten me. Oh, I'm not threatening you. I'm offering you a deal. Victoria smiled like a shark. Break up with Marcus publicly. Embarrass him the way he embarrassed me. Do that, and I'll keep your little secret. And if I don't? Then I tell Richard everything. And trust me, the Castellano family doesn't leave loose ends. Victoria walked to the door, then paused. You have until the end of this week to decide. Choose wisely, Elena. Or should I say Miss Martinez? After Victoria left, Elena leaned against the sink, her mind spinning. Everything was falling apart. Victoria knew the truth. Soon Richard would know. And Marcus? What would Marcus do when he discovered she'd been lying to him from the beginning? ## the moment of truth. Elena returned to the fundraiser on shaky legs. Marcus was talking with several business associates, but his eyes found her immediately. Something in her expression must have alarmed him because he excused himself and came to her side. What happened? His hand settled on her back, steadying her. You look pale. Can we go somewhere private? Elena whispered. Please. Marcus led her to a small gallery room that was closed for renovations. Empty frames lined the walls like ghosts of missing artwork. The moment they were alone, Marcus cupped her face in his hands. Tell me what's wrong. Elena looked into his dark eyes. Eyes that had started to feel like home. This was the moment of truth. She could lie and play Victoria's game. Or she could trust Marcus with the truth and risk everything. My name is Elena Martinez. My father was Ricardo Martinez. He owned the restaurant chain that your father destroyed 5 years ago. The words tumbled out in a rush. I've been investigating what happened to him. That's why I agreed to your deal. I wanted to get close to your family to find answers. Marcus's hands dropped from her face. He stepped back, his expression shuddering. How long have you known? I suspected from the beginning. But I got confirmation today. I have evidence that your father deliberately sabotaged my father's business. Elena's voice cracked. My father was going to the FBI. Then he disappeared. I think your father had something to do with it. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Marcus turned away, his shoulders rigid. So this entire time everything between us was a lie. You were using me. At first, yes. But Marcus, something changed. These past few weeks. Elena reached for him, then let her hand fall. I didn't expect to develop real feelings for you. Marcus laughed bitterly. Real feelings? You don't even know what's real anymore, Elena. You've been playing a role so long you've convinced yourself it's true. That's not fair. You hired me to play a role. We're both living a lie. The difference is I wasn't using you to destroy my family. Marcus spun around, anger blazing in his eyes. Everything I told you, everything I shared. You were just gathering ammunition. That's not true. I was trying to find out what happened to my father. Tears streamed down Elena's face. He disappeared, Marcus. 5 years of not knowing if he's alive or dead. Can you blame me for wanting answers? Marcus's expression softened slightly. No. I can't blame you for that. He ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly exhausted. But I can't forgive you for lying to me either. Victoria knows who I am. She's threatening to tell your father unless I publicly humiliate you by breaking up with you this week. Of course she is. Marcus pulled out his phone. I need to think. I need to figure out what to do with this information. Are you going to tell your father? Marcus looked at her with an unreadable expression. I don't know. I need to verify your evidence first. If what you're saying is true, if my father really did those things. He trailed off, the implication hanging between them. And us. Elena whispered. Is there any chance for us after this? I don't know that either. Marcus walked toward the door then stopped. Despite everything, Elena, I believe you about one thing. I think your feelings became real. Mine did too. That's what makes this hurt so much. He left her alone in the empty gallery, surrounded by frames that held nothing but air. #unlikely alliance. The next morning, Elena woke to pounding on her apartment door. She stumbled out of bed, still in yesterday's clothes, her eyes puffy from crying all night. Marcus stood in her doorway, looking like he hadn't slept either. In his hands were the documents from Thomas Chan. "How did you get those?" Elena gasped. "I broke into your apartment last night after you fell asleep. I needed to see the evidence myself." Marcus pushed past her into the small studio. "Elena, if these documents are genuine, my father committed multiple federal crimes. Not just against your father, but against dozens of other business owners. They're genuine. Thomas Chun worked for my father. He saved copies of everything." Marcus sat heavily on her worn couch. "My entire life I've defended my father. Made excuses for his ruthlessness. Told myself it was just business." He looked up at Elena with haunted eyes. "But this isn't business. This is evil." Elena sat beside him carefully. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to help you." Marcus took her hand, his grip firm. "We're going to find out what happened to your father. And we're going to make sure my father pays for what he did." "Why? Why would you turn on your own father?" "Because some things are more important than family loyalty. Like truth. Like justice." Marcus squeezed her hand. "And like you." Elena's breath caught. "Marcus, I'm still angry about the lies. And I don't know if we can fix what's broken between us." His thumb stroked across her knuckles. "But I know my father is guilty. And I know your father deserves justice. So we work together. Partners in this at least. Victoria will tell your father who I am. Let her." Marcus's eyes hardened with determination. "By the time she does, we'll have already exposed him. Victoria wants to hurt me. But what she doesn't realize is that she's giving us the perfect motivation to move quickly." Over the next 3 days, Elena and Marcus worked around the clock. They brought the evidence to a lawyer Elena trusted. They contacted Thomas Chun for his testimony. They gathered more documents from Marcus's own files, pieces of his father's business dealings that suddenly made sinister sense in light of Elena's evidence. And through it all, they circled each other carefully. Partners but not quite lovers. United by purpose but divided by hurt. On the third night, working late in Marcus's private office, Elena fell asleep on the couch. She woke hours later to find Marcus covering her with a blanket, his touch gentle. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For lying to you. For using you." Marcus knelt beside the couch. "I'm sorry too. Sorry my father destroyed yours. Sorry you had to go through this alone for 5 years. We're going to find him, aren't we? My father. We're going to find out what really happened." "Yes." Marcus brushed hair from her face. "I promise you, Elena. Whatever the truth is, we'll find it together." In that moment, Elena realized something terrifying. She had fallen completely in love with Marcus Castellano, the man whose father had destroyed hers, the man she'd planned to use for revenge, the man who was now risking everything to help her find justice. "Marcus, She started to say the words but fear choked them back. He seemed to understand anyway. "I know.